Welcome to the Misophonia Podcast. This is episode 4 of season 2. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have misophonia. This week I've got another conversation with someone in Europe. Lizzie is in London. We talk about living in lockdown in downtown London, trying to work and relax at home while dealing with neighbors and housemates. We also talk about some of her family members who seem to have miso, and her dad who seems to find it all a little amusing. Liz mentions a Spotify playlist in our chat that she's created, and I've linked to it in the show notes. Definitely check it out. It's her misophonia playlist. I want to also take a moment to mention that the Misophonia Convention will be on in October, and it'll actually be online this year. You should follow the Misophonia Association on social media for the latest announcements. They're still getting things finalized, but it will be October 8th, and there'll be a registration info link and whatnot coming up to get access to the live sessions. I'll have links in the show notes for that too. Now onto this week's conversation. Just a warning that there is some talk of triggers, no sounds. All right, here's my conversation with Lizzie. Welcome, Elizabeth. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi. Thank you, Adil. Thank you for having me.
No, of course. I guess I usually like to start off with, where you located and kind of what you do.
So I am located in London, England, actually in Wimbledon specifically, where you may have heard about the tennis here.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, I am on lockdown in London at the moment, and I do graphic design normally, but I am currently on furlough, which is the UK's kind of UK government's way of kind of getting people that aren't able to work kind of supported at the moment. So I'm kind of temporarily not employed.
Yeah,
but
they use that term here too.
Yeah. Usually I'm a graphic designer.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and so when you, I think when you originally, way back when, booked the slot, you did write a note about how I don't think you know anyone around the UK or London that has misophonia, or it's not such a big thing, and kind of you wanted to connect to a wider community, or just talk about your experiences there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's hard actually, because there's not so much, I guess, press over here about misophonia. When I kind of think that maybe someone I come across has it, and I go, oh, I think you might actually have what's called misophonia, they kind of look at me blankly and they're like, no, like I'm okay. So like even kind of on a level like where I think someone else may have it, they're not even aware of what the hell I'm talking about a lot of the time. So
right, and I think
I don't really know anyone.
Yeah, and I think you reference like the kind of part of the culture over there is to kind of, I guess, be proud or not. Not express stuff like that.
Yeah, I think I put in my original message something about the kind of British stoicism and biting your tongue. If something upsets you or annoys you or whatever, and I think a little bit of that has kind of fed into the fact that maybe people that have it don't realize, because they just want to keep their mouth shut and not be the person that's moaning, because it's kind of seen a bit uncouth in the UK to moan. Even though we moan all the time, we're always moaning about the weather and everything. Yeah. But there's only certain things, light-hearted things that are kind of acceptable to moan about, but the rest, if you're struggling with things that perhaps are on a deeper level, it's coming around. This is 2020, people are starting to talk about mental health and well-being, but on a subject that's really undiscovered in the UK at the moment and really kind of underexplored.
Right.
People just don't understand. When I'm trying to express myself in terms of, no, this isn't just an annoyance. This isn't me just moaning. This is something that's really affecting my mental health.
Right. Ironically, some of the most interesting research is happening in the UK these days.
Yeah.
So what made you kind of what made it kind of cross the barrier for you from like, oh, this is probably just annoyance to like, oh, I found out this is a real thing. Like, how did you find out it had a name and whatnot?
So, I mean, I know I say that there's not been much press, but one day a couple of years ago now, I was scrolling through social media, and I think there was literally a headline on this article that said, "Do you hate the sound of someone eating?" And it was like a picture of someone
Yeah,
biting
those.
into an
Right,
apple.
right.
And just the picture alone, I kind of like shuddered. I was like, oh, like
Mm-hmm.
that noise, I can hear it. Like, and so I kind of opened the article, obviously, out of curiosity. And the whole article just opened up and was just like, yeah, so this is an actual kind of condition that's being explored at the moment. And to be honest with you, when I first read it, I just thought it was another, fake news article,
Clickbait kind of
maybe.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, clickbaity thing. So I didn't really think too much of it. But then I saw, because I clicked on that article, I kept being fed more and more of those articles through social
Mm.
media as time went on. So I kind of thought, hang on, maybe this is actually growing in kind of popularity, and people are actually starting to talk about this seriously. So yeah.
Great. And so what was your situation at the time? Like, what were your kind of triggers, and like how was your misophonia at a kind of a bad state at that point?
Not really. I mean, it's really hard. So obviously I've kind of listened to some of the kind of
Right.
other people you've talked to and interviewed on the podcast, and everyone's got their orange origin story,
Yeah.
you know should we say.
The
And I
dad or
can't really,
mom. Yeah.
yeah, and I kind of can't really pinpoint a moment where I kind of thought this is an issue. I think by finding out about misophonia, it almost had the opposite effect. So I didn't know that I had an issue until I then kind of read that I'm not actually normal in hating these sounds.
Hmm.
It's not that common to hate these sounds, as in, you
To the
probably have
extent that we do.
misophonia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of thought, oh, well, hang on a minute. I thought these kind of sounds really grated on a lot of people, but obviously not. It's, a little bit unique to me. So I kind of discovered that I had it at the same time as finding out what it was,
Right. Yeah. I
really.
mean, it definitely annoys people. Some of these sounds obviously annoy people to a certain point, but then there's that when you get that fight or flight sensation,
Mm.
then it's a whole other level. Um,
Yeah, I think the difficulty for me in kind of figuring out that I had it was because I kind of, when I was younger, I definitely felt I was a slightly, whilst every teenager has their moments, I did feel I was a slightly more, like, on the slightly more aggressive end of the spectrum as
hmm.
like a kid and as a teenager. And I thought that that was just, an anger management issue that I had. I didn't think it was anything to do with being triggered by certain things. And since discovering misophonia, I kind of have now been more mindful of what actually makes me go into fight or flight. And it is just those certain sounds that are my triggers that really most of the time are the root cause of my anger issues.
In general,
So
like your most of your anger issues stem from particular sounds that you're triggered to.
yeah, it seems to kind of always lead back to, the original catalyst for my anger being that it might be that, I've heard a trigger sound, and then I end up being in a foul mood about it,
Yeah.
not realizing that that's what's caused my anger. And then I go into a situation where I'm putting that anger on someone else, and then it causes it about nothing to do with the sound. Just
Right.
because it's made me angry, I then continue to kind of go into a situation with with that anger.
Right. Your
And
brain's in a particularly kind of ready position for.
yeah,
And were they are these have they been the same triggers going back to, well, as far as back you can remember, or have they kind of blossomed into
they've
more
really
recent?
blossomed.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
have
It's
really
common.
blossomed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So um I kind of took some time the other day, knowing that I had this coming up, to really write out a list of all my triggers and really try and figure out, you know, what are the worst for me, and honestly, I could have gone on for pages.
Oh, okay, that long. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, I kind of like a line per, you know, trigger on a lined piece of like A4. You know,
Yeah.
there was like I turned over the page. So like
Yeah.
I don't know if sometimes maybe I confuse trigger sounds with sounds that actually other people also find annoying, and it's just an annoyance. You know, maybe there's a cutoff that I haven't discovered yet, where it's kind of like that barrier between what puts me in fight or flight and what just actually annoys me, but I think is also a trigger. I'm kind of still struggling to see where that line is at the moment, because if I were to put all of what I think are my triggers at the moment on the spectrum, I can't find that line yet, I don't think,
Yeah, I doubt
as
that. I
to
doubt.
what is annoying and what is actually a trigger. So
Yeah, I doubt that it's clear buckets like that. And you're right.
yeah.
There's probably a lot that are definite fight or flight, and then the rest kind of are higher on the spectrum. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think for me, in terms of my main triggers, I love food and I love restaurants and I love going out, and you know, I always put myself in environments where I find myself having to deal with other people eating.
yeah,
And so I'm exposing myself quite a lot to certain triggers versus, you know, perhaps other triggers that could equally annoy me, but I'm just not in that environment as much as I am in, say, a restaurant or a bar where you're hearing other people eating, or, you know, hitting their plates with their cutlery and scraping. And
right.
you know, I'm sorry if that's kind of triggering anyone, just the description of that. But yeah, I think because I'm always in those kind of environments, it's really palpable, um, and distracting a lot of the time. Like I can pick up on people eating from the entire opposite end of a restaurant I'm in.
I was
It can be
gonna,
the only thing I can hear.
yeah.
I'll be mid conversation and then I suddenly lock onto someone on the other side of the room who's hitting their plate, or, you know, scraping their cutlery or scraping on their teeth, or, you know, talking loudly whilst eating, which is creating mouth sounds that, you know, it's all usually around eating that are my main issues, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I do lock into sounds as well. Yeah, if I hear something somewhere else. And yeah, it just kind of shuts your brain down to anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, but the weirdest thing is I was actually, because it's been quite sunny here in the UK, believe it or not. Recently, it doesn't rain all the time.
Are you actually in the
But
UK? No.
yeah, but I was in my garden, kind of, you know, getting the fresh air that I can get in my garden being on lockdown. But just sat there, you know, reading a book, enjoying the peace, listening to the birds tweeting, and then I suddenly hear, I don't know how many, you know, neighbors away, but I could hear in the distance someone clearly having a barbecue,
Mm,
and then beginning to eat the barbecue.
hmm.
And I was like, as if I can hear that. I can't believe that I can't just sit here in peace and read this
Yeah.
book and enjoy the birds tweeting. I'm now having to listen to my neighbor, who is could be 10 doors away, you know, 10 houses away. Um, that's ruining, you know, my enjoyment of that really pleasant day. And it
And you pretty much,
sucks.
and then trying to continue reading that book, I'm assuming, is
Oh yeah,
impossible.
it
Yeah.
didn't happen.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. The headphones went in, you know, and ironically, I think I then put on the sounds of birds tweeting in
The
into
Audubon
into
Society of the
yeah,
UK. Yeah. That's,
yeah,
yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what do you do at that point? What do you reach for? Like, what's your armor? And yeah, headphones is the easy one, I guess
yeah.
everyone goes to.
So the one article actually that the BBC have actually put out there, I think maybe about 6 months ago now, about misophonia. Interviewed a woman, I can't remember her name, but she was kind of talking about suffering from misophonia and her coping strategies. And one of the things that she said she has is a pre compiled, I guess, and pre-downloaded Spotify playlist that is just a list of songs that it doesn't matter what song comes on in that playlist, it's just an immediate quick go-to, quickly turn it on, put it on shuffle, don't care what song it is that comes on, because I know that I trust all of these songs to be good and not have triggers in them.
And they have to start immediately, not have like a slow...
Yeah, and they start immediately, and some of them are like quite loud, aggressive, heavy metal or
death
whatever.
Metal,
Just quickly
those,
throw some sounds in my ears, kind of playlist. And I was like, that's an amazing idea. Like some of them are calming, but like a lot of them are kind of like immediate start, like you say. It's just like quick, like go, headphones in, Bluetooth connect, play on Spotify. And obviously we've got the tube here in London, and I'll be on a commute and I'll see someone start to open a packed lunch, and there's crisps and chewing gum about to go in their mouth. And so I kind of scramble quickly. I'm like, right, get the playlist out, get the headphones on, close your eyes, because like even just seeing someone chewing gum sat opposite me on the tube is enough. I don't have to hear it. So like sometimes I do have to really just close my eyes and put my headphones in, and that's usually my kind of go-to if I'm not already listening to something or watching Netflix or listening to a podcast or something like that, because I'm normally attached to my headphones.
Yep. What are your headphones of choice, by the way?
They are Beats X.
Okay, are those noise canceling or just really good? Are
they
in ear or over ear? I keep track of. Yeah, okay.
So I actually have the noise cancelling, like over ear proper, hefty Beats audio headphones, but these ones are the Beats X, which are Bluetooth, and you can literally have them dangling around your neck like a necklace.
Yeah, they've got I prefer those.
Yeah, they got the magnetized earbuds. So yeah, those are good, but they unfortunately don't actually block out as much noise as I'd like.
Right, until you crank it
at
up.
night. Yeah, at night sometimes our neighbours can be so loud that even on full blast, I can still hear them. With my headphones as loud as they can go, I can still, hear certain noises. I can hear my flatmate moving around, and again, that's another thing that unfortunately triggers me is kind of sounds that I don't know are gonna end.
Oh,
so if I hear my housemates stirring, if I hear them suddenly leave their room, I kind of start tensing up, and I think, okay, now I've just got to listen for them to walk around their house and hope that they then go back in their room and go back to reading their book and stop.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've definitely felt that too. Living in apartments is like not knowing what's going to happen next, or
it's the not knowing what's going to happen or when it's going to stop, and not having the control.
Right.
That really, really kind of messes me up. If I know it's going to end, fine. I could probably hold out, a bit like the lockdown, really. We could probably all happily deal with this if we knew there was an end point and when that was.
Right. Oh, don't understand that, but yeah.
Yeah. But like, if I know it's going to end in like a couple of minutes' time, I could probably grin and bear it for a couple of minutes. But it's not knowing that it's going to stop or when it's going to stop. And I've also realised, especially through having annoying, noisy neighbours, that another one of my triggers is sounds that I can't make out. So it's like really low level sounds that, like a whisper where you can't understand what's being said, or like, a neighbour's TV where you can tell it's a TV, but you can't hear the dialogue of the program they're watching, or like it's not clear enough to make it out. So then I feel like I can't anyway. Then
it's like
listen to it.
It goes back to how this is some kind of a brain processing disorder, where it probably just gets exasperated if your brain is trying to process and can't. So bizarre. And so
I mean, again, yeah, sorry, I was just going to use another example. Again, I was in my garden, whilst it was sunny the other week, and our neighbor, I couldn't see what they were doing because, there's a fence between us, but our neighbor kept making this repetitive banging noise. And I thought, oh God, I have no idea when this is going to stop. This is getting worse for me. The sound was the same. It wasn't getting louder. It wasn't even that loud. The fact it was making me jump kind of made it worse. But, I didn't know when it was going to end. And I actually just eventually stood up on the side of like one of our flower beds to try and be able to peer over the fence and just be like, sorry, hey, excuse me, neighbor, but do you mind? Like, I tried to be as polite as possible, but I was just like, it sounds like, you're slamming the door of your shed every time you're going in and out of it. Do you mind maybe, just being a bit more gentle, or like, I don't know, like prop the door open if you're going to be going in and out that often, blah, blah, blah. And I had a conversation with her and she's like, oh no, I'm actually just doing weight. So it turns out she was deadlifting.
Oh God.
And then,
okay.
slamming the like thing back on the floor. And every time she did that, was every rep, she was slamming it. And I was like, oh, okay. But weirdly, as soon as I knew that that's what the noise was, as soon as my brain could understand what was making the noise, it made it more bearable.
Yep, I can see my brain doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me, and probably not to no one else who's not listening. But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But
that
obviously, like mouth sounds and things like that, and eating sounds and
yeah.
things like that, I understand fully where that sound is coming from and what is causing it.
Oh, of
It
course,
doesn't
yeah,
it doesn't make it any more bearable.
right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I guess right now you're saying, okay, this is all stuff around the house, and you were talking a little bit about the tube.
Mm.
So before you were furloughed, what was your work environment like? Like you're a in designer, I believe, a graphic designer, right?
Graphic
So
designer.
so you were in an office, working for a company. And was it like an open
Mhm.
office? And
Yep.
what are the
Yeah,
trials
open
and
plan office, lots of people
yeah,
eating their lunch or breakfasts
there's
even at
modern
their
people
desk.
eating lunches at their desks like
Yeah.
animals. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've actually fairly recently started the job I'm in now. So I started back in August, which to me still feels, because time essentially stopped when we went into lockdown.
Yeah.
I feel like it was still quite recently. Um, but yeah, I've been working from home now since probably the very first week of March. So I've not actually been in that environment for a while now, but which has its benefits,
hmm
obviously, as a misophone. But I, a lot of the time, unfortunately, end up being office DJ because I'm the one with the paid for Spotify
Oh, yeah,
playlist,
yes, yes,
yeah,
yep.
no ads. And so, and being the one creative person in the office, I'm the one that can get away with playing music and,
Oh, yeah, you're
you
the
know,
cool DJ. Yes. Okay.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
I've done that
So
too.
like I'm in control of the music in the office, which is great. And, I'm glad I can, do that for my colleagues and, they put in requests and whatever.
You're like
But
too quiet, and
well, yeah, but the thing is for me though, sometimes is because I am playing music through a speaker to the wider audience, if I was to then put my headphones in and, play
mm,
something to myself, I just get funny looks. And like, I've not
yeah,
quite got to a point yet where I can like establish with everyone in the office that I have misophonia. And actually, if you see me with my headphones in, like I'm not trying to block you out. Like I'm still approachable by all means. Like come over to me, chat to me. This isn't my way of, being like I'm focusing, go away. It's just sometimes, you know, I can hear something. I'm not going to point fingers, but sometimes there are sounds that are happening that I can't deal with that I have to plug in. And I've managed to explain that to my immediate team, but the wider office don't quite get that. So, it's a new role, and I've kind of I have struggled a little bit with kind of making connections with certain people in the office because they think I'm being standoffish and, reserved and keeping to my corner. It doesn't help that I literally am in the corner. But yeah, it's kind of difficult. But unfortunately, you know, there are the eating sounds, but unfortunately there was not so long into me starting that job, there was a moment where I had to actually turn around to my colleague and say, look, I am so sorry, but what you're doing right now is the equivalent of scratching your nails on a chalkboard. Would you mind stopping? And what my colleague was actually doing was filing her nails. And she'd been doing it for like half an hour already by this point. And I kind of thought, I have grinned and bared it this whole half an hour. I really have to now say something if she's going to continue. And I tried to be so polite about it. And I just kind of got a real kind of, like, just I've got like one more nail, like I'll stop in a minute. And I was like, no. So I was just like, okay, I guess even though it's 11 a.m., I'm going to go have my lunch break now. So I had to leave. I had to leave the office. So because I think I did. I think I'd even forgotten my headphones that day or something. So like I was in real kind of like turmoil because obviously it would be a bit weird for me to just sit there with my hands over my ears. Like I sit opposite my boss as well. So like for her, for her to see me just sat there like a school kid with my hands over my ears, I couldn't have done that. So I just had to remove myself from the situation, which I'm finding myself having to do a lot, unfortunately.
So does your boss know now? Is this part of your immediate team that you've told?
I told her. I think my immediate team's understanding of it varies person to person.
Right. Yeah.
I think some of them they're really understanding. Whereas, I've not really had the chance with some others in the team to really explain it yet.
Or explain, yeah.
Because we're quite a flexible like working environment, so we're not
if you're filing nails,
always
that's
in.
Pretty
We're not
flexible.
always in as well, on the same days of the week, and I've not always had the chance to kind of explain it, but I have tried. And my colleagues that do know, they try their best to kind of be understanding, and some people that sit closest to me, whilst they still will eat their lunch at their desk, I do know that they try to, I can see them trying to not make a sound, but as hard as they try, bless them, they're still triggering me.
Right.
I'm like, I really appreciate your effort, but you're still triggering me. I'm gonna have to go have my lunch now, even though I'm not hungry yet. But
so you said earlier that people might think you're being standoffish. Have you gotten that feedback directly from people?
Yes,
okay.
And actually quite a lot.
Apart from nail filer, like from other people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually even kind of got to a level where even my current boss, but kind of previous bosses from previous roles have even brought it up in annual reviews, and I've kind of just had to be.
So what do they say? They say like, you're people, you need to suck it up, or just kind of like you need to work on this, or
it's more of
I'm just curious how that comes up in reviews, because I'm sure it's coming up in lots of people's reviews around the world. So
yeah, it's more of a kind of
be a team player.
Well, no, not even that. It's like you're a lovely hard worker, but you took your time to really settle, I think, and like people are starting to now warm to you. Everyone's telling me how great they think you are, but like clearly you kind of had some issues settling. That's kind of usually how it comes
Yeah.
across.
Okay.
And like they're trying to be so gentle about it, and I'm just kind of like, oh,
You
you
can
don't
read
even
between the
know, you
lines.
don't,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, you don't even know the start of it.
Oh, right.
Like
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm such a social, open, most of the time when I'm not seemingly moaning all the time, because people think that it's like the boy who cried wolf. As soon as I moan about one noise, it's all noises, and they get kind of bored of it.
Right.
But when I'm not moaning all the time, I'm usually a pretty happy-go-lucky kind of person and pretty chilled out and laid back. And so when I kind of get that feedback, I kind of think that's such a shame. Like,
Yeah.
clearly it's taken all this time for other people to see that, because maybe I did kind of go straight into this new role, kind of almost immediately picking up all my triggers and who's probably going to be causing those triggers over time, and not pushing them away from me in any sense, but just blocking the world out through headphones, which I tried my hardest initially to not do. I kind of thought, this is a new job, you can't just come in here, put your headphones in, and not not get to know your colleagues, and be on hand. If you're Especially when your boss sits opposite you, you need to be you know essentially on call, because she could just peer over
Right.
the top of the desk quickly and be like, oh, do you mind like doing this, or let's have a quick chat, and blah blah blah. And if I've got my headphones in on full blast, and especially as a graphic designer, when I'm in full flow,
Right.
no one can get in touch with me unless they've literally waved their hands in front of me.
Yeah.
So like, it's been it has been like a process to try and settle. Like, it's the same with every new role. Like, I've had quite a few jobs by now, and it is a process settling into new roles, figuring out almost people's timetables. Like, if I know that my colleagues, most of them will usually have their lunch at midday, then I need to be prepared with my headphones, or I need to be prepared to just go have my lunch at midday as well, and go outside and go walk around town whilst everybody has their lunch at their desk. Which, I mean, I guess is a positive thing, that I'm forcing myself away from my desk. But
Yeah. I
yeah,
generally dislike having lunches with work people,
yeah.
but that's when a lot of good stuff happens. Have you ever like left a job because of this, or whether it's on your own accord or somebody else's, or has it always been just kind of something in the background, but you've left for other reasons?
It's usually, well, yeah, it's definitely been for other reasons, but there have been scenarios where it has perhaps been quite a contributing factor
Mm-hmm.
to my decision to leave. It's not been, the only reason.
Yeah.
There have been other major issues that, have been the reason for me to leave. But I won't, I won't dismiss the fact that it's kind of a relief. It has its benefit, in the
Yeah.
sense that it can encourage me to leave an already bad job.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah,
And
there's
it kind
one
of
bright
makes
side.
makes yeah makes me maybe happier about leaving. But
Yep.
yeah,
And so now that you're furloughed, you're working remote like all of us are.
yeah.
Do you think when you go back, it's going to be, you're probably doing Zoom meetings or whatever. Do you think it's going to be, you think you're going to have maybe some more flexibility to work from home, or is it going to be, your boss going to have everyone back just like before?
I mean, this is kind of the catch-22 for me. Like, I'm a really social person. I love surrounding myself with people. So this lockdown is driving me insane.
Yeah.
So whilst I kind of am thankful for the fact I don't have to deal with all these triggers that are in my office, I equally have triggers here. I have my
Yeah.
neighbors,
Right.
I have my housemates. So to me, I'd actually rather be in the office, because I am such a social person and I like being around people. And almost in a way, my house sometimes can be too quiet. I actually live on a really busy street. Like, my bedroom window leads out onto like one of the busiest roads in my area. And my house can be so quiet sometimes that it makes my trigger sounds amplify.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually open my window a lot of the time, whether it's raining, cold, whatever outside. I open the window to let the noise of the traffic in, to
Yeah.
drown out my trigger sounds.
Yep.
So like I
Makes
will
sense.
I will open a window at night, even if it's middle of the winter, because our neighbours are being loud, or my housemate's still staying up and watching TV downstairs. I will
Right.
open the window to allow the noise of the traffic flowing past to be a distraction from my trigger sounds.
Yeah, makes
So
sense. A bit of that white
yeah,
noise in the background to
yeah. So I
mask stuff.
do, I do kind of, I do think it's as bad here as it is at being in my office in terms of triggers. So you know, for me, it's a no-brainer. I would rather be in the office.
Yeah.
Weirdly.
And what about so you talk about work, colleagues and housemates. What about family? When you see family, what's that like?
So, I mean, I know we kind of began this call with me saying I don't really know anybody that has it, but
Mm-hmm.
my mum, I think does. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't think she has it to the extent that perhaps I do, because she's a really placid person. So like maybe she does have the same sensations that I do when it comes to her triggers, and we've actually talked openly about it.
You have,
And
okay. Yeah.
yeah, and I know that she has certain triggers, and part of me through this process has wondered if maybe as a kid growing up, knowing and being aware of her triggers quite vividly, that maybe
Mm-hmm.
it kind of then forced mine in a way. But she's never really, I don't think, accepted that perhaps she has it. So the reason I said at the beginning of the call that I don't really know anyone that has it is because I don't know anyone that has it that I can relate to and discuss it with. I think
Right.
my mum has it, but she doesn't seem to get.
She won't acknowledge it, or she hasn't
Yeah,
owned it, if she
yeah,
has
she's
it.
not quite owned it yet. She doesn't seem to get as angry as she knows that I do, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
And
I don't
so
know if that's just because of her personality, and like, it's her nature to be a bit more placid and passive with things, but really maybe, there is real internal turmoil for her,
what
but
were what were
she's
some of
not
her
really expressed it.
right? Well, what were some of her reactions growing up? Without going into what her triggers might be, did she take it out on you guys somehow, like raising her voice or leaving?
So weirdly, no, we would just so me and my dad used to almost laugh about it, and obviously being a misophone now, it kind of upsets me that we used to do that, because I used to obviously just think, oh, this is just, something that winds my mum up. That's funny,
Oh, yeah,
rather than thinking, hang on, there are things that wind me up, and, they're quite similar, and this isn't funny to laugh at. Like, I kind of never had that thought process. So it was kind of like we would be on the train sometimes, and the three of us, and someone would open a packet of crisps, or it would just take a guy sat next to my mum to get a laptop out of his bag, and you could see her sink into her seat and just huff and roll her eyes. And then
oh,
she would then turn to me and my dad and be like, oh, for God's sake. And, just we knew immediately what she was talking about, because, she always got wound up with these sounds, but her way of expressing that was to literally just sink back, roll her eyes and huff, and
yeah.
just then sit there quietly and almost just take it. And she would just stare blankly, like directly in front of her, almost as her way of trying to push it out. I guess she was trying to blank it out without having any coping strategies like I do with headphones or anything like that.
So a bit of a
And
British reaction,
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, she's the same with me. She's the same as I am. Sorry, with you know, not even having to hear the sound yet, but knowing what's coming.
Oh God,
So
with the
like
visual. Yeah.
the guy getting out his laptop to her is, oh God, he's going to start hammering the keys. The noise of the
Mm-hmm.
click of the keys of his keyboard, she can't deal with. It's a trigger for me, but it's not, I don't think, up there as badly as, mouth sounds and eating and
Gotcha.
other things like that. And she's the same with crisps, like rustling the packet. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah, and rustling the packet, eating the crisps, the general noise that involves. And I think sometimes, because in the UK, I don't know what the US is like, but in the UK, it's quite common to have a meal deal. So you get a sandwich, a bag of crisps, and like
Yeah.
a bottle
Combo.
of a
Yeah.
bottle of Coke for
Yeah. We have the
like
same thing, but everything's twice the
yeah,
size. Yeah.
yeah, and like a deal price. So like if they've got crisps, most likely they've also got some soda. And so then they'll open the soda, and just the hiss of the noise of the soda popping
Yeah.
will kind of annoy my mum as well. And she again knows that's coming because they've got the crisps, and then they finish the crisps, and she's like elated. Thankfully, they've finished the crisps finally. But then you hear the hiss of the bottle opening or the can of Coca-Cola opening, and then again she just huffs and goes, oh, and then kind of goes back inside herself again until that noise is over.
Well,
And I've
and
kind
then
of
once you
watched
have,
this process. I've watched this process growing up, I guess, and not really realized that perhaps, that is a mirror of me, or maybe I even learnt that behavior from her.
hmm yeah, we don't know exactly, but yeah, I've heard that, yeah, that theme a lot.
Yeah.
Just recently in an interview, like, um, having some of that stress transferred from another person that you were around growing up into you.
Mm, mm,
And
definitely.
what was your dad's role in all this, other than being the big jokester, with you growing up?
Entirely that, to be honest. So, I mean, even just before this interview, I actually was FaceTiming them, and I told them all about it. And, again, I tried to kind of get conversation out of my mum about the subject to see if
Yeah.
there was any more that I could, maybe bring to this interview that maybe I hadn't realized. Like, I asked her if she had ever noticed me being particularly angry when I was younger about certain noises, which she hadn't. But whilst this was all going on, my dad sat there giggling and then like pretending to eat crisps and kind of making the noises and kind of
Uh-huh.
laughing about the fact he's mimicking the trigger sound. And I'm like, we've talked about this, Dad, for like a year. I can't believe, even now, especially before I'm about to talk to a deal, you're doing this, like he
Be
was
nice,
still
Dad.
joking. I
That's
think, yeah, he was still joking around. And luckily, the way he did it, it didn't trigger it for me. But, you could see my mum, because it was right in her ear. You could see my mum kind of like suddenly go, oh.
yeah.
And so, you know, I think that's a lot of the reason why my mum kind of weirdly doesn't accept it for herself yet, because she's always had my dad just being very quick to dismiss it as her just being annoyed and, you know,
Oh,
had
gotcha.
having a bit of a moany personality, or a British personality.
Right.
Yeah.
And have you told any other like siblings or anything? Any other family members?
Yeah, so I actually don't have any siblings to moan at, so it's just my parents that get
Yeah.
get the brunt of it. But I actually have a cousin who he's what is he now? I think he's 20. He'll kill me for not remembering. He's 20, and it's taken probably up until like a year ago for me to spot that he might have it.
Oh, okay.
Um, because he gets really annoyed with his little sister. He's got two younger sisters that are twins that are both 10 years old. And so, they're like typical kids, like eating with their mouth open, like throwing, like, well, not throwing food around. They're not that young anymore, but, just eating a bit more aggressively without as many table manners as you might have when you're older.
Right.
And so he just thinks that he's getting annoyed at one of the twins for being particularly rude. But when I watch it, when I go over there and I kind of see him getting annoyed with her mouth sounds and her, way of eating and her slurping of pasta or anything like that, I see a lot of my own kind of responses in him. And weirdly, he's actually now drawn my attention to my other cousin.
Gotcha. So
okay. now when I go and visit, I kind of watch her whilst we're eating for triggers, which is stupid.
Do you talk to him about it, or it's just something?
I have had some few words about it with him, and I've explained to him, what I have discovered so far about it and the fact it's a condition. But he doesn't seem to have anything else that triggers him, like nothing at all. It's just his little sister eating. And I hope for his sake it stays that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have heard of single triggers with people. Actually, the last interview I just posted had a single. Well, I don't know when this is going to post, but there are single triggers, and it's just like there's that fight or flight, which just makes it different, and that person has something off that we all kind of share.
And I do kind of feel. I feel his pain sometimes because he's 20, he's still living at home, and obviously if he is to express his annoyance with his sister doing what she does, he kind of gets met with, you could be living on your own.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was gonna say
you don't have to be here.
Right.
We don't have to feed you.
Yes.
You could go feed yourself, and so. Any little moment where he gets annoyed with his sister, he's not really allowed to express that he's annoyed about it.
Oh, so he has had that feedback, or from parents, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, they all know that it annoys him.
Okay.
I don't think they realise to what extent.
Gotcha.
So yeah. So it's interesting to obviously witness, because I'm kind of starting to see that maybe he's coming into something that I think actually possibly started for me around the same age. So,
gotcha.
Because I can't really think back to anything that really was a trigger for me pre-18, I don't think.
Okay. So it's been something you've noticed later on. Well, that's at least you got out of school okay, and weren't completely distracted during high school, which seems to be a big problem for people.
Yeah, well, I mean, during this process of trying to kind of think about it a bit more, I have thought back, and I did go to boarding school, which meant I shared a room with 5, 6 other girls. I was surrounded by people constantly. I never had space to be alone. And so, there were times where I would get annoyed with maybe some of the girls in my room, like you do as a kid. You kind of, even at boarding school, you still treat it like a sleepover,
Right.
stay up late chatting and, whatever. And I did used to get annoyed with certain things when I was younger, but I just thought it was, me being annoyed with the fact that they weren't being considerate to others and allowing others to sleep. But then I would look at, my friends, completely passed out, already asleep. They didn't care. And so I'd kind of be lying awake thinking, oh God, I wish they would shut up. Or you could hear like the girls in the room next door, being noisy as well. And that used to keep me up, even though once I'm asleep, I am a heavy sleeper. It was just, for me, a lot of the time, it was that process of getting to sleep even as a kid at boarding school, you know, it was difficult. And so I do think that it's possible that, you know, I started to have triggers back then, but it's really hard for me to objectively kind of look back at that time in my life and really know whether they were triggers or not.
Right. It's interesting. Well, yeah, I guess maybe we should start to wrap up here. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious. And you know, it sounds like you've put some thought into this before our interview. I'm curious if you have any other things that you want to share with people or advice you want to give to people who are listening. Maybe some
I
insights
mean,
you found.
yeah, I mean, the main insight, obviously, that I found was, you know, the whole idea of the not the podcast, the Spotify playlist. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
once you've got the headphones in, you know, that go-to, have it downloaded. So if you're ever not on a Wi-Fi signal, you know, you've got it there. It's already downloaded, you know, ready to go. But I mean, weirdly enough, I actually sometimes listen to like ASMR, which I know
Oh, yeah.
is really weird.
Controversial, but some
So
people do. Yeah.
controversial
Some
because
people
a
do get
lot of
something
it
out
I
of it.
hate. A lot of it I absolutely hate. Cannot listen to it. I throw my headphones off and I think, oh no, 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 stop! Like make it stop. But there are, you know, if you can bear to listen to, you know, a series of different ASMR sounds, you might actually find one that actually does have the positive effect that,
Yeah.
you know, everybody that loves ASMR gets. Because you know, I sometimes don't want to listen to music. Like I love music, I'm big on music. But sometimes I just need noise, just a noise
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, just drowns out everything else around me, that is almost like a constant, a bit like when you put brown noise over these interviews, you know, just something that like levels everything out. And weirdly enough, I found that in some ASMR.
Mm-hmm.
But
Do you have a playlist or something of ASMR that you kind of go through, or yeah, I guess it's probably individual for everybody.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Because I mean, you know, I try to listen to podcasts sometimes, but um, you know, there are some podcasts, for
It can be
instance,
rough.
where
Yeah.
as soon as someone starts talking and they've got a hiss in their voice or a click in you know,
The
in their
microphone sounds
teeth
like it's
or the
down their
microphone or
throat. Yeah.
something, yeah, something like that. I'm just like, oh, okay, well, that's that podcast then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't listen to that one ever, because it is difficult having it directed into your ear when you have, especially in-ear headphones, can be, you know, can be really difficult. But I mean, if you can bear it, just really trial and error, like those sounds, and try and find something.
Do you
Because I
have
mean, I try to meditate, and I use
oh yeah.
certain meditation apps, and there are some apps that have sounds or, you know, voiceovers to help you and guide you through the meditation that I can't deal with at
Yeah,
all.
Headspace has that British guy, I guess. That
Yeah,
didn't seem to
yeah.
trigger me that much, but
Mm.
yeah.
Well, I actually went to a physical kind of guided
Mm.
meditation not long before we went into lockdown. Actually, I discovered there's a place near my office where you can go on your lunch and just have a guided meditation session. It's really good. And I was going a few times a week. And then next thing I know, I go to this session on a Friday when usually I'd go on a Wednesday. And the guide for the meditation had changed to a different person. And it was an hour long guided meditation that I was stuck in
I was gonna say
because
that's worse than a
there was,
lockdown if
yeah,
you're
honestly, I have never, oh, well, I haven't felt that bad in a long time, but I was gripping the edge of my seat, listening to the extra elongated S sounds
Okay,
that
right.
were being made by the guide, and it was the least relaxing kind of hour of sitting doing nothing I think I've ever had,
At least maybe
especially when
now
I was
you
in a
know.
guided meditation.
Yeah, the
At least I
irony.
now know to not go on that day. But I had actually taken a colleague with me that day, because I kind of thought, oh, I've discovered this meditation place. We can go on a lunch. It's great. Like, you should come along. And we came out afterwards, and she's like, oh, that was so good. And I was like, oh, no, it wasn't.
Right.
No. That was hell, actual hell. Because I couldn't just get up and leave. I felt,
Yeah, you
again,
can't.
British stoicism,
Right.
too polite to leave. So, it's trial and error with everything. There are meditation practices that might work or might not. And, unfortunately, I think a lot of the time you've got to just grin and bear it to then find out what works for you.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
I know
very,
that's
very true.
really, really awful advice, actually, but that's just what I've had to try and do.
Yep. No.
Maybe someone listening might have never thought that actually the sound of traffic doesn't annoy them, or the sound of a Hoover is actually quite soothing, or your washing machine spinning could actually, even though it's loud, could actually be a good,
It's
you know
constant, and you know what it is.
yeah,
So yeah.
exactly, a good thing to maybe record and listen to, when you have those triggered moments.
Yep. Well, no, this has been great, Elizabeth. Yeah, I want to kind of we could obviously go on longer.
I mean, I could talk forever, as you can
Yeah,
probably tell.
yeah. It's been great to have you on, and yeah, good luck with everything. And
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me, really. And honestly, what you're doing is, it's great. Putting the initiative out there yourself to do this. So really, thank you.
thanks again, Lizzie. I really enjoyed that, and hope you listeners did too. Remember to check the show notes for that playlist and also links to the Misophonia Association for info on the convention coming later this year. Let me know what you think about the show in our Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast or on Twitter at Misophonia Show. Please leave a review if you like the show on Apple iTunes. Music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.